Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our final episode in our Black History Month panel series. It's been a really, really incredible month. And, you know, I always tell my students that when you choose to be a jazz musician, or rather when jazz chooses you, that you don't get to live a day of your life as if it's not Black History Month. And I was so glad to be able to celebrate Black History Month by celebrating some wonderful musicians from around the country. And so I would like to thank the West Michigan Jazz Society for supporting these events. I'd like to thank my friend, my brother, Kevin Jones, for inspiring this series, for inspiring our Speaking of Jazz series, and for supporting it, both in the audience and also tonight you'll get to hear from Kevin. So this has been a really special thing for me to be able to do. As I said before, jazz is Black American music, and as such, we have embarked on this journey throughout the month of February because we believe that it's important to acknowledge the lineage, the ancestry, the heritage of this music. And that when we do not honor and properly, when we don't pay respects to that, we're completely missing the point. And so as an academic jazz musician, if there can be such a thing, somebody who teaches at a college, I guess, there's not a day in my mind, in my studio, in my classroom, in my rehearsal space, that we don't honor this. Now, we had a gig a few weeks ago. Days are all running together. And that gig was very special. It featured the Elgin Vines Trio along with Kevin's band, 10th World. The nature of this music is such that the heritage, the rhythm, the culture, those things have to be celebrated. And in Black History Month, we take 1 month and remember the way that we ought to be acting all year round, the way that we ought to be paying homage to these great musicians and this great culture all year round. And so it's in that spirit that we have our final Black History Month panel tonight. And we've got some great guests. We decided to kind of do the go big or go home kind of approach tonight. And I can't wait to glean all of the wisdom that's going to come from this panel. So first, I'd like to introduce my friend, my brother, percussionist, Kevin Jones. Kevin has played with a who's who of jazz musicians, including, but not limited to, Charles McPherson, and many, many other legends of this music and also of soul. So we got the Isley Brothers, Whitney Houston, Archie Shepp. The list goes on, and chances are if they existed at all on this mortal coil, Kevin's played with them. So please welcome Mr. Kevin Jones. Hey, how's it going, Kev?
Thank you so much. It's going great. Very busy. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. That was that was quite the introduction. Thank you so much for all your work. It's not easy, I know, doing interviewing so many people, and I really appreciate you doing all the work that you're doing, Jordan. Thank you so much.
Hey man, appreciate you too. Feelings mutual. But rather than Kevin and I talk about how much we admire each other, we're going to bring up our next guest. Mr. Rufus Ferguson is a wonderful pianist who will be performing at GR Noir next week. Kevin, do you have the date on that? I forgot the date. I can't believe
March the 6th, Saturday, March the 6th, I believe. Yes.
Saturday, March the 6th. So Rufus has been on the program a couple times before. He is an outspoken advocate of the culture of this music. He is an accomplished teacher, an accomplished performer, and next week you're going to get to hear a very special trio with Rufus, with Michael Reed, and with Brandon Rose. So please put your virtual hands together for Rufus Ferguson. Hey, Rufus.
Hello, Jordan. Kev.
Welcome.
What's good, man?
Yes, sir.
Our next guest plays what I would like to refer to as God's instrument. And the reason that I say that is because he plays the instrument that I play. Mr. Isaac Norris was born and raised in the heart of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and he's played in numerous venues all across the United States. He's played with several recording artists, such as Marvin Sapp and Deborah Perry. He leads his own band called the Isaac Norris Project, and he recently released some new music, which I'm hoping that he's going to take some time tonight to tell you about. Please welcome saxophonist Isaac Norris.
Hey, Jordan.
Isaac,
thank
how
you.
Doing?
Very good, very good. Good to see you all. Thank you.
Our next guest has many, many names, but most that I know affectionately refer to him as Doc. Dr. James Sawyer has been on the scene in Grand Rapids for a very long time. He taught 18 years in the Grand Rapids public school system and was named a member emeritus of the Michigan School Band and Orchestra Association. He served for 15 years as a band director in the award-winning Kentwood Public School program, where he left his mark, his legacy, on many, many young people who not only hold music close to their hearts, but some of them even make money from it. They hold it in their careers. Dr. Sawyer has conducted the Blue Lake International Jazz Festival Orchestra throughout France, Germany, Denmark, and currently he is a teacher, a professor at Aquinas College and Grand Valley State University, if I remember correctly. He holds degrees in music from the Vandercook College of Music, a little school at the University of Michigan, of which I'm also an alum, and the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Please welcome an amazing trumpet player, an amazing educator, an inspiring human being, Dr. James Sawyer.
Hi, Jordan. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure as always. Now, our final guest, we were talking before the program started and I said, it's not a party without the pocket. And if this next guest has anything, it's a pocket. And that thing is deep. Wahsington is one of the most in-demand drummers in any genre in West Michigan. And as a matter of fact, he plays with a wonderful group called Groove Ground. D, as he is often called, is probably one of those drummers where if you hear him play, you know who it is. You don't even have to see him. You just know that it's D. And so I'd like to extend my final welcome here to Mr. D. Wahsington.
Wow. Thank you.
What's up,
Thank
D?
you for having me. Thank you for letting me be here.
Letting you be here. Thank you for honoring us with your presence.
Thank you.
Now, everybody, this is our final stream in our Black History Month series. And so we're taking a beat to celebrate everything that this great Black American music has done, not only for our community here in Grand Rapids, but also for our country, for the history of music. And Xavier Davis said it really well last night when we were talking. The history, Black history, is American history. The history of Black music is the history of American music. So in that vein, I want to hear how you all got your start in this great music that we call in this great musical tradition. I'll shut up now so everybody else can talk.
Who you want to go first?
I'd like to hear from Doc first.
Okay. All right. Where do you want to go, Jordan?
I mean, you played the trumpet, right?
Yeah, I do.
How'd you pick up the trumpet? Why the trumpet? Why not saxophone like me and Isaac?
Well, I'm not gonna go there. But anyway, when I started back in Chicago, which is where I grew up, and as I was coming up in Chicago, I hung around on the Chitlin circuit myself with a lot of the blues players and things and those kind of guys. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Bobby Rush, but Bobby Rush and and Tyrone Davis and all those guys. That's kind of the thing that I used to do back then, and I did that for a number of years. In fact, playing the trumpet got me through Vandercook, because I'd do those gigs and I'd walk in to school the next day and, okay, this is the money I got from the gig. And I literally played my way through my undergraduate degree. So I really enjoyed doing that. But then once I graduated, I was fortunate enough to get into the University of Michigan, which is how I came to Michigan in the first place. And many local artists in terms of Detroit, and the Ann Arbor scene was fantastic back then. And so, I did many things on my acts back then, but my heart was in teaching. So I continued to work toward my degree and degrees, and then finally came back to Grand Rapids, and a very good friend of mine who just recently passed away, Noah Webley, he and I taught together at Ottawa Hills High School when I first got there. And I'll never forget, when I got there and I started putting a jazz band together, the one instrument I didn't have was a bass player. Where he was the art teacher. He said, "Hey, don't worry about it, I'll play." And he'd come in and play with us, and it was a really special opportunity for us. And the kids loved it. A lot of those kids are still out there today. And one of the kids who was around and in our program at the time was Bishop Marvin Sapp. And Bishop Sapp was just a phenomenal singer. And it was one of those where I knew in high school he was going to be what he is today. He was just an amazing singer and performer. But meanwhile, here in Grand Rapids, I've been very fortunate to be with these fine musicians and playing with them. And then I also play with the Grand Rapids Jazz Orchestra, and we just put out a new album, a new CD, and hopefully we get a lot of people to get into it. And we can't wait until this COVID is over so we can get back to performing at our home at Founders Brewing Company. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. I picked up that record. It sounds great.
Thank you.
Except I don't know about that lead alto player, Bob Nixon. Something might be up there. Everybody who knows Bob Nixon knows that there's nothing wrong with him. I was just messing around. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Doc. And I think it's really, really, evident by how many incredible students you've had over the years, just how much of your life, how much of your spirit you've put into your teaching. And I know that you've impacted countless lives. And I think that is maybe one of the most noble things that you can do is, share music and invest your life in somebody else's life.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful thing, man.
Thank you.
So Rufus,
Yeah.
so you play the piano, but I hear there's also another instrument that occasionally calls your name, sometimes on Sundays, if you know what I'm getting at. Can you talk about the influence of the Hammond organ in your playing and in your musical life?
Yeah, I mean, I come from the church. You know, I play jazz, but I don't by any means consider myself a jazz pianist. I come from the church. You know, I'm gospel all day, and yeah, on Sundays I play organ at. I mean, it's funny he's talking about Bishop Sapp and Isaac played for Sapp. I play organ at Lighthouse on Sundays with a phenomenal band over there. And so that's I probably play organ more than I do play organ more than I play piano. But yeah, I mean, I come from the church, and so that influence kind of led me to jazz. I come up on the east side of the state, Flint, Detroit. That's my stomping ground. I'm in Detroit right now at home. And so I come through over here, obviously it's a huge gospel scene. You have the Clark sisters and I mean, the Moss family, everybody's, you know, from Detroit, you know, a lot of the big artists. But at the same time, you know, you'll have some of the biggest churches in one corner, then you go down and the next corner, there's Cliff Bell's, and go down, you know, 2 more blocks and there's Baker's, you know, so it was nothing to go to a concert, a gospel concert, you know, on Saturday night at 8, get out just in time to hit Cliff Bell's and go see Rodney Whitaker play, you know. It's and so that's the kind of environment that we had over here. I mean, and I'm into a lot of jazz organ as well. I mean, one of my favorite jazz organists is over here, Duncan McMillan. So you know, I spent some time with him and really learned from him. But I come up in the gospel tradition, so a lot of the organ players over here are my mentors. I mean, Jeff LaValle, who was the organist for James Cleveland and wrote a song on Kanye's gospel album. He's the guy who taught me how to play organ. So it's very rich gospel history over here. And that's kind of my roots, actually.
Now, Isaac, I know that you said that you also played with Bishop Sapp on multiple occasions. I'm wondering if you could talk about kind of your work as a saxophonist in the gospel tradition.
Well, when I played with Marvin, it was when he was really getting started with his career. His wife, Melinda Sapp, God rest her soul, was his manager. And we would all travel. Actually, we had young children. We had our young kids, and we'd travel. We played in Memphis. We played in North Carolina, Milwaukee, Chicago, and these were weekend trips. So this is where you load up the van and the kids and everybody, and we would go on the road with him. And that was fun. Just to give you a little bit of my background is, I've played saxophone since I was in the 6th grade. But I desired to have a career in architecture. So that's my full-time gig. But music has always called me to, it's just almost another outlet for creativity and self-expression. And I'm wondering why. I appreciate you asking me to come on, but I can only speak really from the standpoint that music is, my music is really about my individual growth and self-expression and trying to grow, because I spent a majority of my time, really studying architecture. So now what's good about music and lifelong learning is to be able to continue to go back and now being a part of that recording scene and playing live. So I almost feel like I'm rejuvenated and starting over again, and really enjoying the music. So I didn't answer anybody's question, did I?
I think you did. I think you answered the question.
Okay,
cool.
But and I will continue to remember what you said. The saxophone is God's instrument. So
that's right. It is.
Okay, good.
And everybody knows that.
That's
apparently for Doc Sawyer.
I don't know that.
So when we talk about it's interesting that you mentioned lifelong learning, Isaac, because, I think that there are so many great musicians who are getting up there in years. And, when I was talking to Benny Golson, who was a guest speaker for some of my students, he was still like, I'm learning every day. I'm still learning, and the music is still continuing to challenge me. It's still continuing to make me a better person and a better artist. And so I think, like, when you have a music that's as deep and spiritual as the tradition of Black American music, I think that's something that's pretty easy to come by as lifelong learning. Because, I think about it, even like Train. Train was searching for his whole life, discovering, unearthing, solving for his entire life. And I think many musicians do that. So I think that's a really beautiful sentiment that you expressed, Isaac.
Yeah, thank you. That's my truth.
Yeah. Now, Kevin, you're a little bit of a kind of an anomaly in some of this, because, Isaac was born and raised in Grand Rapids, and Rufus, is from the east side of the state, but you're from even further east than that. Yeah. So can you tell us about your upbringing in Englewood, New Jersey, and what it was like to be surrounded by the environment that you were in, and how that affected your career?
How much time we have?
I don't know. It's the last one. We might as well go big or go home. You know what I mean?
I'll make it brief. Wow. I just finished doing a recording with one of my best friends that I grew up with. His name is Brian Morgan, who you guys probably never heard of, but if you heard records from Kashif or Melissa Morgan or the Fly Girls, anyway, he is just a hands down, just a killing producer. The cat plays guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, he plays one of those like Stevie Wonder, Prince kind of guys. Anyway, we grew up together, and we just finished doing an album, a little recording, honoring one of our fellow Englewoodians, Englewood, New Jersey, Bernard Bell, who co-wrote "Remember the Time" that Michael Jackson did. Bernard Bell is the brother of Regina Bell, the singer. So Regina Bell and Bernard Bell grew up in my town. Regina Bell's I was in one of her first groups. She's younger than me. But besides Regina Bell, we had the Isley brothers, obviously, that lived in Englewood and in Teaneck, the town next door. We had Wilson Pickett that lived in our town. We had Dizzy Gillespie that lived in our town. We had Sam Rivers that lived 3 blocks away from me. Sarah Vaughan, Dizzy Gillespie. I mean, the names of the musicians go on and on and on and on. So I grew up in an environment. So I was born in the 50s, and so the late 50s. So, coming up, I grew up in the, 60s and 70s. I started playing congas and hand drums at 10 years old. And there were 2 drummers that lived down the street from me, 2 brothers, Earl Buster Smith and Marvin Boogaloo Smith, not to be confused with Marvin Smitty Smith. Buster Smith played with Eric Dolphy and Benny Bailey. And now these are guys that lived 3 houses away from me. And my father went down because I was interested in playing hand drums. He went down to ask the two brothers, Marvin and Buster, where could, my son has a conga drum and wants to play. And they came up with this dynamite teacher that happened to also play with Babatunde Olatunji and the Laroque Bay Dancers and the Isley Brothers. So he's the conga player. The guy that taught me is the conga player that played on Layaway and Work to Do and the Brother album. If anybody knows that music, So we were all surrounded by music, and it's very, very interesting because back in those days, we didn't have cable, we didn't have all of the distractions that we have now. We didn't have video games. So when you grew up, you played music, or you played sports, or you were just a bookworm. That was what we did, and there were a lot of musicians in our town. Just incredible musicians that were in our town. And besides that, we had 2 record labels. We had the Isley Brothers T-Neck record label, actually 3. We had, at that time, was called All Platinum Records, which became Sugar Hill Records. It was owned by Joe and Sylvia Robinson. So I not only got to witness all of the jazz, all of the soul, but the evolution of what we know now as hip hop, right? So I was there recording for Joe and Sylvia Robinson for various things. The only other people that lived in our town, actually lived in the town next to us, was Yogi Horton, the drummer, Yogi Horton, and Nat Adderley Jr., who ended up becoming Luther Vandross's musical director, and who is a fabulous, plays fabulous straight ahead too. Like he can blow. I mean, he could play. Just amazing musicians. And so that's the kind of environment I grew up in. And, I grew up in an environment where if you couldn't play, you just, like if you played a wrong note, that was you either don't show up for the next time, or, you might actually get in a fight. And, also, there's the church, too, because the Regina and Bernard, they came up in the church. When I was a teenager, I had gigs in the church, rehearsals at the church, First Baptist Church, Englewood. I didn't grow up, but I didn't grow up as a Baptist, but I still had work at the church, because they pay money. So anyway, I could go on and on and on, but it was a very fertile ground for musicians where I grew up.
Right on, Kevin. I always love hearing about your kind of your upbringing in the music, because I'm so fascinated that when you name your neighbors and people who are in the next town over, I'm like, oh, there's some of my favorite musicians. Right on. You're talking about Sam Rivers and all these great musicians. Man, it's so cool. So D, how did you get into playing drums?
Drums come from church. I'm right where Rufus is, right at the Apostolic Church in Saginaw, Michigan. Is where I began. It's the 2 and 4. The pocket is there. If your pocket is nice, you're gonna be at the church as long as you can. As long as they want you. So drums. Elder Butler. He was a deacon at the church. I remember just watching him play. He had Pisces, and he was just going at it. He reminded me now of Bernard Purdy. So he was kind of like that kind of feel back in the day. So I was just yeah, church got me. So that's where it begins, man. This church.
In the words of Kevin Jones, choich. You got to get the choich up in there.
Church pocket, man. It gets you big.
I want to say something about D, because I know that he didn't say much, but When I first came here, I moved here 5 years ago, and I was here about 7 to 8 months, I think. And he was rehearsing with a band, and he put it on Facebook, rehearsal on Facebook. And I was like, man, who is this cat, man? I got to play with this guy.
Yeah.
You know? And it was D. And I was like, I ran to the, it was like, you want to rehearse? You want to play with our band? I was like, yeah. If he's playing, I'm playing with him.
Well, you know, that's the thing about D. You know, D doesn't have to say much. He just sits down at the drums, and you know everything you need to know. Like everything.
I call him the clock.
Yes.
Because he's always on time.
That's right. That's right. That is very accurate. You know, so tonight is about celebrating great Black musicians such as yourselves in Grand Rapids. So I'm wondering, what do you guys like most about the Grand Rapids music scene? And I won't limit it to jazz, because I know you all are so versatile that you work in so many different areas of, you know, wonderful music. So I'll just say the West Michigan music scene. And I'd like to go kind of around the clock here. We'll start with Kevin, and then go on to Rufus, and then Isaac, and then Doc, and then we'll finish out with D. So Kevin, what do you like about the West Michigan music scene?
Why you want to start with me, man? Well, you know, there's a certain sense of community. People are, you know, real friendly. And I always feel like, since I moved here, I've been accepted in different groups and cliques of people. That wasn't like, you know, you got to stay in one sort of clique, you know, of musicians. And, you know, everybody treats me well, you know, and has welcomed me into the music scene here, you know, in all different parts. And I've played with everybody on this panel at some point or another in different various situations. And I'm really, you know, quite honored. And I want to say, yeah, I'm quite honored to be a part of it, accepted in a place where it was completely foreign to me. A complete culture shock from me moving from the New York area to move here. But everybody's been wonderful to me, and I'm really highly appreciative of that. So I'll just leave it at that, because I'll be talking for a long time. So
you should see Kevin with children. We did a gig at a school one time, and I just stood back and watched him captivate the whole room when he had those kids in the palm of his hand with what he was doing. It was amazing. It was really amazing. Yeah.
I believe that. I believe that for sure. Rufus, what about you? What do you like about being in West Michigan and the music scene?
You know, the West Michigan scene, I'm pretty sure Kevin can probably attest, coming from the East Coast. It's dramatically different than the East Side of Michigan. I mean, the East Side is huge. The scene is the West Side scene is very small compared to the East Side, but it has its perks. You know, it's a smaller place, but it has a bigger sense of community, I think, for that reason. And I love all sides of the community. I love the jazz side. I mean, I haven't played with everyone on this screen. Of course, everyone knows of Doc. You know, me and Kevin played plenty of times. I almost played with Isaac some years ago, but it never worked out. And I haven't played with D, but I know D. I remember everyone has that story of D. It's like, I remember, I'm not going to say where, because I don't want to give away the specific camp or whatever it was. But I remember like seeing all these drummers like, oh, you're good. And you get to D, and was like, yeah, but you're slamming, dude. You know, so, but we haven't had a chance to play together yet, obviously. But I'm hoping to change that, of course, too. I love the jazz scene here. I love the West Michigan scene in general. The gospel scene in here is even smaller than the jazz scene. But it's nice. You know, I definitely have to shout out my church band is, you know, one of the best to do it. You know, they're led by MJ Holman, who is a extremely killing keyboard player. He's from the East Coast, from Connecticut. Shaq Anthony plays drums with us. You know, Stevie Jordan plays drums. So we have a nice group of gospel musicians in the West Side as well. So I love the scene, and even with people that you don't play with often, you still feel a sense of connection and familiarity with them, just like right now. So, you know, that's what I love about this scene.
Well, I think what I like most about is the West Michigan jazz scene at this present point in time. I dig the potential. I really like, you know, a lot of the stuff which D and his crew are doing, Dutcher Snedeker, and that whole ground, what is it called? Groove Ground. Come on now.
Groove Ground.
Say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Groove Ground Radio. Yeah. I love what the young cats are doing, and it's really inspiring. And I also dig within West Michigan the diversity, which I think is getting better. And I really enjoy that we do have that variety within the music here. I feel, and maybe compared to Detroit, it's not as strong, but the gospel music and the musicians here are they're second to none. We have some really great gospel musicians here. But most of all, the potential is what I enjoy the most about West Michigan jazz.
Yeah, and I can piggyback on that, Isaac. The potential in this area is just, it's unlimited. I got to thinking about when D first came to Grand Rapids. He was a student of mine at Kentwood, and we think, who is this kid? And I mean, he came in and just added a whole dimension to what we did in the jazz program over there. And the thing that was really fascinating to me was watching all of the students who were behind him kind of follow him around like a puppy dog, and just how he inspired all of those kids. And even since he's left, the program was going 100 miles an hour then. But when you talk about drummers, it's really been a factory here in the Grand Rapids area. My son Jay is a professional player in New York, and Evan Hyde, Edie Evans Hyde's son, he's also in New York. He's doing some great things, and it's just fantastic watching all of those things go on. One of the things that I'm hoping for when all of this lockdown is over is that the hunger for jazz is so heavy that people just flock to the clubs and to the different places, and then us as musicians are able to get out and perform on a regular basis, just getting out there doing it, because we need to do this. We really need to grow this here in this area. The things that you're doing, Jordan, that I check out all of the time, I'm just amazed at how much ability and talent and creativity is in this area. This is really fantastic for me. And as an educator, one of the things that I try to do with the students that I continue to teach, and even the college students that I'm working with, one of the things that I try to tell them is, get out there and nurture this love with these kids. Nurture this, because when I look at the history of everything, and many of you guys can attest to this, one of the things that we've been able to see, the youth jazz festivals have just blown up, and if we can get the educators to be continue to be even stronger and just spread the love of this music, it's going to be fantastic. just one last thing I'd like to add. I'm hoping, and Isaac and I have talked about this on several occasions. One of the things we kind of hope to do is to increase especially with jazz, the love of jazz in the African American community. One of the things that we notice that most of the jazz that you see in this area are not performed by African Americans. Most of it is by people of other origins, and that's not a put down. That's just a statement of fact. That's what it is. But when you look at the history of jazz and what it was, one of the things I always tell the kids, hey, we used to dance to this stuff. This was stuff,
right.
Right. People used to party to this, so don't look at this as something that, I got to sit down and I got to figure this out. Hey, when you got people like Davion's keeping the pocket, things like that, and y'all know what I mean when I say he gets into the pocket, you got to just sit there and put your head down and just go with it, because it's smoking, man, it's just there, So that's just something that I'm looking forward to, and I know, like Isaac says, just the potential of what's here, what's going to happen, what we're looking forward to is going to be exceptional.
Yeah. Fire, just all fire right here. So let me start off by just saying, my career or whatever it is, my little jazz scene, little gigs would not even matter. And would not even be anything without Dr. James Sawyer. So gigging, starting in Jazz 2 and moving up to Jazz 1, going to the gigs to like the City Hall, playing those gigs. Those got me just hungry for like playing gigs. So thank you. The West Michigan Jazz Society and like West Michigan music, I've come so a part of everything. I love diversity. I can't, with black musicians and jazz musicians, I don't really see a lot of that as a younger cat. I would love to see more of that potential, that forwardness of seeing more young African American musicians playing jazz. Not to put down to seeing the other homies. Madison George, one of the youngest cats out here, smashing, my hero right now. He's like literally my hero every day, but just killing. He plays with Kevin Jones because Kevin Jones is an OG, and he you get the gigs. Let's be honest about it. But they always appreciated me, and I've always appreciated West Michigan and West Michigan jazz, like playing with Isaac Norris as well, like learning the pocket, learning how to be a musician and how to read and how to play. I owe it all to these guys right here, Jordan. I can just say, just being with other musicians, my growth is still growing. It's still developing. It's still happening every day. And now that I'm home in this pandemic, I'm recording. So, I'm recording at home. It's different. It's all different. But I love West Michigan jazz, and I would love to see more us, the color folk out here, swinging a little bit, learning some swinging and playing pocket with that. And Kareem, what's his last name? Kareem something. He's from Detroit, but he's
Kareem Riggins.
Kareem Riggins.
Yeah,
I watch him a lot. He swings so hard, but he got the pocket like no other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like no other. But that's just who I'm inspired by. I would love to see that more in GR. I'd love to. Like I said, I owe my growth and to these guys right here. So
well, and there are, I hear you guys, what you're saying, particularly about young Black musicians. I will say I have been really encouraged by young folks such as Kevin Brewster, really great saxophonist, incredible young saxophonist. And I actually have a student who holds a lot of promise. His name is Houston Patton. And I would love for you all to hear my student Houston sometime. And he has a group that he's playing with at Hope right now that is doing some very, very fine things. I have another great student who plays piano and Hammond organ. His name is Joe Wilkins. And he's a great player as well. But I think
Joe Wilkins, does he play basketball also?
Yes, he does.
Got it. He's from South Haven.
Yes, he is. Yep.
Wow, and so he plays organ because he grew up in the church.
That's right.
His dad's a pastor.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. So you all, let's talk now about, you say that the Grand Rapids scene, and well, let's just say West Michigan, because I mean, Rufus, you're down in Kalamazoo, where you live and hang out. So when we talk about obstacles and when we talk about potential, what are the obstacles that, the scene has to overcome in order to grow? What are some of those obstacles that you all are seeing? Let's go in reverse order this time. So let's start with you, Daviance.
Obstacles that the scene is this just West Michigan? Is it we talking about jazz, or are we just still talking about like musicians?
It can be whatever you want it to be. I know that you all work in so many different areas of the music scene. So, really whatever you take it to mean whatever you want it to mean.
You know what? Can I jump in here for a quick second?
Yeah, sure, Kev.
I think we should stop delineating this is gospel, this is jazz, this is R&B, this is this is that, because it's all music and it's all creative music and it's all Black music. So when we say, well, we're going to talk about jazz, just because it has a backbeat of 2 and 4, does that make it not jazz? I mean, it's all a continuum, and it should be all talked about. So don't leave it. Just talk about it. Don't worry about it.
The OG has spoken, everybody. The OG has spoken.
But don't you think that people want to put it, especially in West Michigan, they want to put it in a box to define it so that it's more palatable and easier to accept? And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think that's a bad thing. But isn't that so what they can define and call what jazz is?
Well, I think that's a really human thing. We as humans really want to compartmentalize things. We want to put things in a box so that it makes sense to us. But the reality of the matter is just like what Kevin said. Yeah. It's a continuum. But is
that a West Michigan problem, though? Is what I'm asking. Okay.
No. It's genres in music were created to sell the music.
Yeah. I will say, though, Kevin, there's one thing about jazz that seems to be different than other forms of Black music. And I think a big part of it is because it's been institutionalized, it's been whitewashed. Jordan, I will get off on tangents in this and a quick, Kevin, too. I think
don't get me started now.
That's what I'm talking about, though. That's kind of what I'm saying.
I think hip hop, all these things, there's a natural relation to the culture. In jazz, for some reason, when it became institutionalized, when other cultures began to pick it up, they began to take the culture, the history, and all of that out of it. And so I think specifically for jazz, that connection needs to be made again. Where in gospel, I'm in the culture all day. You don't walk into a gospel church and see a bunch of white people. It's just, you don't do it.
You gonna get me started. Let D talk. I'm gonna let D talk.
This is good. This is good for me because this is what I'm learning. I'm learning this.
On this for another 2 hours, man. I mean, you're right. But we got to do something about it. You're doing something about it. I'm doing something about it. I just did a master class at Western last night, and I had all the students get up and dance and sing because they're too intellectual. You got to get rid of that part of it But anyway, please let D talk.
But no, Kevin, you're exactly right.
Right.
The jazz does get so intellectualized that those whose ancestors came through the culture kind of step back from it because it doesn't feel indigenous. It doesn't feel like they're a part of it. And there are some students that, when I have that conversation, there's no pushback or anything, but you talk about it from that standpoint, and all of a sudden their eyes glaze over because they don't listen to that. They listen to something else. They play something else. Now, I do have to say, those students who have those African American students who have embraced it, oh my goodness, when they do, they take off. And one of the things that I've been really, really happy to see is when those students take off, they don't forget, they'll show up and ask questions to Isaac. They'll call you, Kevin. They'll call you, Rufus. They're teach me, tell me more. How can I learn this? That's the one thing about David. David will call me all the time. And I'm like, well, what are you calling me for? And all of a sudden we start getting into a deep conversation and everything. And that's something, that also is what happens in the gospel tradition, with gospel music. That's how it's done. That's how we're given it. It's word of mouth. It's it's grioted, so to speak. That's how we do it. So we try to at least I try to always talk about it from that perspective, and hopefully that fire lights up and gets into them. But it's the culture. You were right, Rufus. It's that whole cultural thing that our kids kind of shy away from. Yeah. So D, you can go ahead and
please, because I'm about to bust.
I know.
Well, I really don't have any obstacles. I haven't really seen any obstacles because I've surrounded myself in the West Michigan Jazz Society with people that are willing to take me and show me what I need to know to get where I need to go. That's starting with Dr. James Sawyer and then leading up to Isaac Norris, then Samuel Johnson and Associates of Blues, and things like that. And working with Keith Hall. I can't forget Keith Hall, because going to Keith Hall, West Michigan Summer Drum Institute was the best thing in my life, I can tell you. And if that's anyone that's going to learn and teach you jazz drumming, my top three, he's definitely up there. And I believe that I really didn't have any obstacles because I believe that God put these people and these teachers here to take me the way. And that was mainly Dr. James Sawyer, because he's the one that sent me to Keith Hall. Him and Mr. Ross at East Kentwood, they sent me there. And I came out of there and I was like, all right, I got a couple jazz gigs, blah, 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 blah. But, I don't have any obstacles when learning jazz or playing any jazz in Grand Rapids or even West Michigan, because they're so open to me, and I can still call my teachers and be like, hey, I need to know something. And they'll give it to me. So I don't have any. I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. That's your opinion. Don't apologize for your opinion and the way, what you're actually experiencing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think one obstacle that I think in jazz overall, not just in West Michigan, and I know I've talked to a lot of teachers, Keith Hall's one of them, who will say, I try to tell my students, learn more about this, and they're like, no, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to do this. I want to do it this way. And they're not as open to taking critiques as some of the older musicians. For lack of a better word, they're a little soft. Like, you tell them, like, hey, you're dragging, man. And that's the way I feel it. You know, it's like, nah, but you're dragging. You know, even now, and I've told you this before, Jordan, when we talked. Even now, I'll do a gig with Rodney Whitaker or even Bob or Ali Jackson, and Bob will be like, "Hey, the first set you did this, don't do that again." Or, you know, Ali will play with me and he'll be like, "Yeah, I don't like that. Try this harmony instead." It's like, I'm 30 and I'm gonna consider myself a professional, and my response is, "Yes, sir. I will give that a shot." You know, and I'll do it next time. He's like, "That's it," you know. But you have to be willing to really listen to the pioneers of this music who have kind of come along. Be willing to understand the history. It's okay to learn the new stuff, to learn the most modern sounds. That's cool. But there's a level of history and lineage that has to be addressed in your playing. No matter what you're playing, no matter what time signature, how cool it sounds, there needs to be lineage and history that needs to be heard in what you're playing. And until musicians learn to address that, we're going to have some issues with jazz moving forward because they're not willing to address the music of the past.
Yeah.
True. We used to call it sitting at the feet of the masters, right?
Yeah.
So when I was a teenager, early 20s, there was a thing called Jazzmobile. Every Saturday, we got the opportunity. Jazzmobile is an organization in New York City that really is just a part of the community. And it really focuses on the underserved community. It's in Harlem. The offices are in Harlem. Every Saturday, they had a school. And at this school, we would go to Jazzmobile School. And there's a lot of great musicians that are playing today that went to the same school, Jazzmobile School. The teachers that I got that were there on drums was Freddie Waits, Charlie Persip, Pablo Landrum on African and Latin percussion, Charlie Simons who was the mallet keyboard person for the Wiz. We had Jimmy Heath there, Jimmy Owens, Frank West, Frank Foster, Lee Morgan, and you could go to school for free.
Check it out.
It didn't cost, like, okay, you got to pay a tuition, $350 for your parents. That's part of the obstacle. Okay. Then in the summertime, the Jazzmobile brought out the Jazzmobile. It was like a rolling stage. And you could go to every Wednesday night at Grant's Tomb in Harlem on Riverside Drive. You could go and see Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. You could see Dexter Gordon or Woody Shaw or any number of the great jazz musicians of that time that were still alive in the 70s, right? So it's accessibility. It's accessibility to be able to learn for our community, for the Black community. Like Dee was fortunate to run into Dr. Sawyer, right? Rufus, you were fortunate to run into the people that you ran into that coveted your passion for the music. What we have to do, to me, and this is my opinion, is to create that kind of environment here.
Here in Grand Rapids.
Here in Grand Rapids. Yeah. And that's been my mission. Because what is it that after you've played with so many people and you've done gig after gig after gig and all kinds of varieties of different situations, from the lowest bar, club, whatever, paying peanuts to getting rides and limousines to your gig. What's after that? It's to leave a legacy behind. So, these people did it for me. It's my responsibility to advocate for the younger musicians in my community. And so for me in my particular situation, the way I see it is that when you're young and you have natural ability or a gift, you look at what it is that that you're up against. It's like, well, where are these people going to work? Now, Dr. Sawyer talked about you can't wait till the pandemic's over so everybody can get out and play and do, and do stuff. But what's going to be open for us to play? And how much money can we make for us to play? Founders is once a month or every other Sunday, something like that, right? To do the big band thing. Right. And, they have the Speakeasy, which is on Sunday night, which is basically a jam session. You had the Old Goat that used to have music. That's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
Right? That's gone.
Nodos have music too. Yeah.
Nodos, yeah.
Well, Nodos. Nodos have music. I worked there but it was the same people every Friday night, And I'm appreciative for having that gig. Although it's more of a cocktail hour gig kind of thing. It's not some place where you could go and be creative and expressive or whatever. And, there's other venues that have had music and then they, Harmony Hall and those kinds of places. There needs to be venues. Now, there's a venue that's open now that's Black owned called GR Noir. Which I'm helping them be the curator, booking person. And so, it's tough because it's COVID. They're only allowed to open for, at 25% capacity. And right now there's no horn players allowed. They won't let God's instrument into they won't let God's instrument into the space right now. No, there's no horns and no vocalists, so it's all trios and preferably like piano, bass, drums, or organ trio, or guitar, bass, and drums, or whatever. So and I'm trying to create an atmosphere where it's completely diverse, and that's been my my objective. But also, I think that we really have to look at what the reality is in terms of economically and what young people see. Like, yeah, play jazz so you can make you can do $100 gig at the Speakeasy, whereas if you're a rapper, they see kids with the, you into hip hop or you play soul or some other medium where you can make money. Of course, the interest is going to wane a little bit. But what has to happen is the exposure to our young people. And I'm hoping that being with the West Michigan Jazz Society, that we could start some kind of educational program where we go into the schools. And because once you see the music and you feel the music, that's what connects people, So, because I'm sure that everybody on this panel at some point went and saw somebody play a horn or, a trumpet, a saxophone, a bass, or a drum, or something that affected them someplace deep down inside of their heart. And that's what connected us to the music. So we have to get out there some kind of way and to give this music to our young people in underserved communities, especially. And I'm gonna shut up.
No, Kevin, but I think you're absolutely right. With regard to, getting out there and really getting the music in front of the young people, because I mean, you're right. Everybody, I'm sure, everybody who's in this space right now has had an experience like that. And I think, when you think about impacting the future and leaving that legacy that you're talking about, the important thing is you know what? It's this word that I very recently learned, called Sankofa. You know, you're looking back and bringing people with you. You know, I hope I didn't mess that up too bad. But I mean, to me, that's what the music is all about. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that you're talking about, Kevin. I really hope that, you know, I see you doing that, you know, in your life. I see Doc doing that. Rufus, I see you doing that. You know, D, you are such an inspiration to so many people. You doing that. You're, you know, anytime you're in a room with D, you're like, all right, cool, it's swinging. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Isaac, you're inspiring that next generation too, because, you know, look at D. And I think every one of
yes,
every one of you's done it, you know. Now, in terms of the struggle of kind of this current moment. I mean, let's be real. This current moment that we're in is a real. Yeah, it's a really, really interesting time to see. You know what? Forget about it. It just sucks. You know, this time is difficult, you know, and so what then? How have you been weathering the storm? How do you weather this storm with regard to, you know, your music, keeping the music alive, but also to just surviving?
Well, what I think is most encouraging, as what I've seen, is and the artist being able to, especially I operate in kind of a smooth jazz genre, so I've seen a lot of these artists they've been working with each other, collaborating off of cross-platform digital recording together, and trying to figure out how to make a way out in this situation. Whatever we have, we love the music, but I don't eat air. I don't eat, the heat is on because I'm able to pay a bill. So I want to see musicians, especially African-American musicians, we need to figure out how to become part of the digital stream right now, and how we can record with it, how we can create digital sources of revenue that support our career as musicians. How can we do that? And if you've never been trained, and we are probably one of that culture which is lacking in computer training and access to computers and technology.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, we're kind of locked out of that ability to generate a revenue stream in music. And I think it's important. When I see what D is doing and his crew of young people learning how to work that revenue stream. We've got to, you know, I think that's what it's about, survival in this climate. So what I've been doing, I've been practicing. I have been doing some recording and working with producers in other states. You know, you send music back and forth and put things together. I do miss playing live. I do. You know, and I think it's going to come back. But in the meantime, you know, we got to keep busy and stay diligent to our task of developing our own music. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think it's just watching how the technology has grown. Actually, one of the things that I think has come out of our current situation is the fact that now you can create on your own computer, you know, and the album that Grand Rapids Jazz Orchestra did, everyone performed in their own space, and a producer put it together and mastered it and everything, and that would have never been heard of 5-10 years ago. That's really fantastic. Then I know there's been several gospel productions that have been done that way, and you see all of the singers on the screen, and you hear the music in the background. It's been really special watching how all of this has come out of something that was so bad. Something good has come out of something so bad.
Right.
I know it's going to change how we do things going forward. Once it is over. So I look forward to being a part of that amount of growth and development. Although I'm still technologically challenged with some of the things that I do. So, but I think that's going to be great. But I'm looking at all of that stuff behind you, D, and a lot of the things that you're probably doing, when you record and whatnot. You're probably recording and sending some things out for someone else to match on to, and that sort of thing. This is going to be really special. Like I said, as we move forward.
Yeah, I can go ahead and go. The whole thing has been a little tough, but something bad has definitely turned to something great. I've gotten the privilege of recording more. That's something I have not done a lot of. Just because live has been my thing all the time, every day. Live is what I know. And so when I come back to live, it's going to help me. The recording aspect is going to help me being more consistent and things like that on my records and the live. So I really am taking this time to learn Logic, learn how to mic my own things, learn how to put gate and compression onto my drums, tuning and learning sounds of my drums, matching sounds, going to the records from old days and turning this snare down like 10 low just to get that old fat thing from that record. It's been different, but I'm enjoying it because when I get back in the live, it's Isaac, we going off. But it's been a little struggle, but like I'm learning a lot. And I'm only gonna take this time to build and create more and send videos to my friends and just work. So it's great. It's great for me, and I'm ready for live. It's tough being at home every day, and so much I can do being stuck in the basement and with lights in your eyes. So yeah, ready.
Where to go next, Jordan?
Rufus, did you have something to say on this topic?
Nah, they said it all.
All right, that's cool. So, this is typically the point in the program where we start the program. This is typically the point when we start taking questions. And we actually did have one come in earlier, but I just want to throw it out to all of these really, really great these really, really great audience members here that we have. And I'm wondering what all of you might have to ask our panelists. Let's start, though, with a question from a wonderfully young trombone player named Judah. Judah says, I have a question for the panel. Was there a time when you felt the music and or musicians you're playing with are not where you want to be? How did you get away or improve the situation? Let's throw it over to Kevin.
Why you give me the hard question? No, I'm kidding.
My bad. Sorry, man.
No, I'm not actually sure, Judah, what you're asking me. Are you asking me, I guess, about being in a situation where music doesn't sound good, or you weren't feeling it, or the you didn't feel like the band was together, or I'm not sure. If you could put the question back up there, I can answer it better. I wasn't really clear on the question. You're muted.
My bad. Let me put the question back up here.
Okay.
Let's see. Where is it? I gotta scroll. My bad, guys.
You gotta scroll. I'm sorry. Was there a time where you felt the music and or musicians you're playing with are not where you want to be? Okay.
How did you get it?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time, man. It happens. It's not something that that's always automatic. But it's something that when you embrace every musician on the stage, as well as embrace the audience, you change the dynamic of the music in that situation. Okay, so if somebody is dragging the time, or the time is lagging, or something is not happening the way you want it to happen, there's not much that you can do in that particular situation, like go and talk to, hey man, do so and so and so and so, and start yelling on stage, or just get like an attitude. That is like the wrong thing to do. That is like the opposite of what you want to happen. There's ways for technically do something. I think I've seen piano players or bass players say something, call out, the right changes, if somebody was messing up the changes or something like that. If somebody's dragging, I've seen players, stay on top of the beat, stay on top of the beat or whatever, but what should not happen is that you get an attitude.
Right.
Okay. So like, oh man, this really sucks. You have to bring out that determination within inside of yourself to make it happen, despite a difficult situation, and check yourself, check what you're doing, like, don't be like, it's the other dude, or it's because of him, because of, you have to go with it because you're in the middle of this conversation or this music, and you have to make it happen because there's people in the audience. It's a moment, and the moment will never come back. So if you get stuck on the mistake that the bass player makes, or the percussionist makes, or the drummer makes, you'll be stuck back there, and that car already passed, bro.
Yeah.
That's like getting stuck on what happened in 2016 in politics or something. Like, you can't stay there, man. You got to move on. You got, let's move it forward. Let's move move collectively to help it move forward. Do what you have to do, whatever the situation is. Be the catalyst to make the change happen inside of the music.
Yeah.
So that's it
kind of brings home a situation I think about sometimes. In playing with a big band, one of the things I really enjoy is playing in a section where everyone is locked in, pitch-wise, rhythm-wise. I mean, if it's swinging, you know it's swinging, and then there are times where you may be in a situation where everybody's not on the same page. And you can tell when that's happening because there are different ideas as to what we should be doing in terms of what we're playing, and we didn't communicate on it before we started. And you're in the moment. Well, the one thing you can't do is lose your professionalism and not keep trying. And as you keep trying, you still got to play within the framework of what's going on in the ensemble as you're performing. It reminded me of a gig. Well, this was back in the Chitlin circuit. I knew some of those blues singers. They did lose their cool, and we're back there in the background. And whoa, dude, where you going? They turning around looking at us. And we're trying to do the best we can to give them what they need. But afterwards, the audience knew something wasn't right. And if you were approached by someone later on who may not have asked you exactly what happened, but they let you know, okay, I kind of saw what was going on, and that didn't look too cool. And a lot of times when that happened, I would just say, yeah, leave it alone, and then just move on, But those things happen, you gotta focus on that and focus on doing what you can do. The one thing I always tell myself, though, if I am in a situation where I know that the situation isn't going to improve, or for lack of a better word, it's just a bad scene. I'm probably not gonna do that one anymore. I probably won't be back for that gig anymore. And and if I can't get out of that scene, in the very short future, I'm working hard to make sure I leave that scene when I can and when I'm prepared for it. So Judah, I would urge you to look at it from the standpoint of kind of like what Kevin says. So what are you doing? And if you're doing what you can do to help you, then when it's all said and done, you'll be okay.
Hey Rufus, do you have any thoughts? Oh, my bad.
Oh yeah, sure. I have a thought. I'm what they said was perfect. Only thing I'm going to add is, Judah, I guess none of us really know your situation, so I can't really speak specifically to it. But I will say, as much as this music is personal, we enjoy it. For a lot of us, it is still business, and you have to always sell your best self. So if you feel like whatever situation you're in isn't working, and it can affect your business, you need to put yourself into a situation that is better for business, and it'll obviously be more enjoyable for you. Bands evolve all the time. They start with one group, and 10 years later, there's a whole another group, and 10 years later, there's a different group. It's okay to, play with new musicians and, have different people you call, and maybe you'll find that group that, okay, this is the set. And then you'll eventually call them. Don't burn any bridges, of course, but, keep yourself open to options, and eventually you'll find that group that clicks. But don't be afraid to move on and to try different things with different people.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts on Judah's question? Beautiful. Oh, sorry. I thought somebody had something to say. My bad. Okay, so we've gone a little bit longer than we typically do on this on this interview show thing, and so I just want to thank all of our panelists for their time, for giving more time than perhaps you had anticipated. But I think that speaks to the kind of generosity of spirit, of time, of talents that you all have. I really appreciate it, and I know our audience does too. So one last time, I'd like to thank Bujo Kevin Jones, Rufus Ferguson, Isaac Norris, the legend himself, Dr. James Sawyer, and Daviance Wahsington. You all are just so inspiring, and I could not think of a better way to end our Black History Month series. But, you know, it's like I said, when you sign up to play Black music, every month is Black History Month. Every day is Black History Month. So I would say to our audience, if you liked what you heard tonight, this is not the last you're going to hear from our panelists. So make sure you join us throughout the month of March and April. We have already started to book our series, and it's going to be a really wonderful time. So I just have to say, once again, thank you everyone for being on this panel tonight. And I hope everybody has a wonderful night and a great week.
Thank you, Jordan. This is special. This is
Great job, Jordan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Kev. Really appreciate it.
And
All of you.
thank you, Jordan, for doing, for Black History Month. I really want our audience to know how hard Jordan has been working this month. He takes out the time. He did one of these panels last night, and, being a professor of saxophone at the Jazz Studies Department in any kind of university it's more than a notion. There is a lot to prepare for, and to prepare for, panels, not just one guest, but we have 5 here. Last night he had 3. The week before he had a couple. The week before that he had the women and Black women in jazz. So, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to Jordan for, raising the awareness and for being such a hard worker for the music itself, because nobody's getting paid for this, but we're doing it out of the kindness and the love for the music and the love for the musicians. So Jordan, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. That was really kind of you to say that. I look at it, I'm just doing right by my teachers. I'm doing right by the people who poured into my life, and doing what I know to be right and to be the right thing to do for this music, as not only a teacher, but as somebody who has been taught and been invested in by some really incredible musicians like Jerry Allen and Dennis Wilson, who poured into my life. And so, whatever I can do to pay that forward, I'm going to do it. So thank you all for your time, and Kevin, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. All right, everybody have a great night, and everybody take care. Thanks, everyone.
See y'all soon, man.
Bye.
Yeah. See you very soon.
Take care.
Take care now.
Bye-bye.